I left Thanksgiving and now my family is crying because who will help them, so I found them a good psychotherapist, but they are angry with me and threatening. Seriously? Thanksgiving has always been a circus in my family. Every year I tell myself it's going to be different, that maybe this time it won't devolve into a mess of blame and guilt. And every year I'm wrong. This Thanksgiving was no exception. I showed up at my parents' house around 3 p.m. with a bottle of wine and my "let's get through this" face. My mom was in the kitchen doing her usual over-the-top holiday preparations, my dad was watching the game, and my sister Emily and her husband Abraham were on the couch scrolling through their phones. The atmosphere was good, at least for the first hour. Dinner itself was great. My mother's cooking never disappoints. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, the works. For about 45 minutes, I actually thought this Thanksgiving might pass without drama. But as soon as the dishes were cleared, my dad leaned back in his chair and sighed, which is his go-to signal that the conversation is about to take a turn. "So," he said, looking directly at me, "your sister and Abraham are having trouble, you know." I knew exactly where this was going. I'd heard it all before. Emily and Abraham, who got married last year at the age of 19, are unemployed, broke, and drowning in bills. My parents have been bailing them out for month's rent, groceries, you name it. Apparently, their financial troubles have become a full-time job for my parents, and now they wanted to pass the baton to me. "We've already done so much," my mother said. "We raised you, paid for your wedding, helped you get your house. But it's time for you to step up. You're the one with a good job and no kids. Their family. They need you." I stared at her, trying to process what I had just heard. I was stunned, not because this was new information, but because they said it so matter-of-factly, as if it was a foregone conclusion. I tried to stay calm. "I don't know, Mom. I have my own bills to pay. I can't just start supporting two people out of the blue." That set them off. For almost 2 hours, my parents went on and on about how selfish I was, how I never help out, and how they were tired of doing everything for Emily and Abraham while I sat on the sidelines. The worst part? Emily and Abraham never said a word. Not even once. They just sat there and let my parents fight their battle for them. It was as if they expected me to cave in eventually. I didn't yell or argue. I just sat there and let them talk themselves out of it. And when I couldn't take it anymore, I stood up, thanked them for dinner, and said, "I have to go." My mother immediately got emotional. She started saying something like, "Don't go out like this." But I didn't even turn around. I grabbed my coat, walked to my car, and drove home. The silence on the drive home felt like the first breath of fresh air I'd had all night. But of course it didn't end there. The next morning my phone started to explode. My parents kept calling, asking what I'd decided about helping Emily and Abraham. They weren't asking if I was okay after last night, or apologizing for ambushing me at Thanksgiving. They just wanted to know how much I was going to contribute to their cause. I could have ignored them. Part of me wanted to. But instead, I gave them an answer that I thought would finally shut them up. "Fine," I said. "I'll help you. Come by my place Thursday morning and I'll take care of it." They sounded thrilled, probably imagining that I'd write Emily and Abraham a big check or agree to pay their bills permanently. But that wasn't the kind of help I had in mind. What I had planned wasn't going to cost me a penny, but it would definitely make a difference. Thursday morning arrived, and my parents, Emily and Abraham, showed up right on time. I could see their relief even before they walked in. My mom was carrying a tray of cookies, my dad looked smug, and Emily and Abraham both had that awkward half-smile, like they were trying to seem grateful but had no idea what to say. "Thanks for having us over," my mom said. "It means a lot to see you step up like this." I nodded and let her think whatever she wanted. Once everyone was settled in my living room, I dropped the bombshell. "So here's what I did," I said. I booked a 3-hour session with a family therapist. He's fantastic. He's helped some of my friends work through some tough stuff. I think this is just what we need to figure things out. The room fell silent. "A therapist?" my dad finally said. Yeah, I replied. Look, this isn't working. The fighting, the blaming, the finger pointing, it just makes things worse. We definitely need to sit down and figure this out, and a therapist can help us do that. My mother's face turned red. You booked a therapist? For us? Exactly. We have the session today, in about 30 minutes. My dad stood up. We didn't come here for that. We thought you wanted to help your sister and Abraham financially. I shrugged. I am helping. This is the help you all need. They didn't take it well. My dad started ranting about how I was wasting their time, and my mom looked like she was on the verge of tears. After a few minutes of heated back and forth, they stormed out, slamming the door behind them. I was left with Emily and Abraham. They didn't seem any happier than my parents, but they didn't leave either. So, what now? Emily asked, her voice dripping with irritation. Well, I said, you two stay for the session. You've got bigger problems than not having enough money. You're married, and you're already relying on everyone else to take care of you. That's not sustainable. Abraham finally spoke up. We're trying, man. It's just hard. Jobs aren't easy to find and the rent is insane. I get it, I said. But getting married at 19 and expecting the world to bail you out, that's a choice you made. And now you have to figure out how to deal with it. They both looked uncomfortable, but to their credit, they didn't argue. When the therapist arrived, they went through with the session. I stayed out of it for the most part and let the therapist guide them through their issues. They talked about their financial problems, their lack of a plan, and how they'd relied too much on my parents. The therapist didn't pull any punches either. He pointed out that they needed to take responsibility for their own lives and start working toward independence. By the end of the session, they looked exhausted but a little more aware of their situation. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd start to make changes. But, of course, that wasn't the end of it. After the session ended, Emily and Abraham left without saying much. They didn't seem angry, but they certainly weren't grateful. I thought that was the end of it, at least for today. I was wrong. The next morning my mother called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. How could you? She said as soon as I answered. Good morning to you too, I replied. She launched into a tirade about how I'd humiliated the family by bringing in a therapist. She accused me of making things worse and claimed that I was the reason that Emily and Abraham were now upset and lost. I told her that was nonsense and hung up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was brewing. Later that afternoon, Emily texted me. Can we talk? Just us. I need to tell you something. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I said yes. She came over alone, which was surprising. Abraham was usually glued to her side. She seemed nervous as she sat down. After a few minutes of small talk, she blurted out, Abraham's in trouble. What kind of trouble? I asked, bracing myself. She hesitated, then said, He hasn't been trying to find a job. Not at all. He's been gambling. I just stared at her. This was definitely not what I had expected. Gambling? I finally managed. Like how much? A lot, she said quietly. That's why we're so far behind on the rent. And he's been borrowing money from people. I didn't even know about it until a few weeks ago, but now these guys are threatening him. I didn't know what to do, so I told Mom and Dad that we needed help, but I didn't tell them why. They'd freak out if they knew. My jaw dropped. Suddenly it all made sense. The constant financial black hole, the way Abraham always had an excuse for why he wasn't working, it all clicked. Emily, this is crazy, I said. You're 19, married to a guy who gambles away your rent money, and now you're dragging Mom and Dad and me into this mess? She started to cry. I know, okay? I know it's bad. But I don't know how to fix it. He promised me he'd stop, but then he didn't, and now it's just a disaster. I took a deep breath and tried to think. Does Abraham know you're telling me this? No, she admitted. He'd be furious if he did. At that moment, I realized there was no way I was going to get out of this without things getting messy. All right, I said. Here's what we're going to do. You have to tell Mom and Dad the truth. All of it. If they're going to continue to help you, they deserve to know what's really going on. And Abraham? He needs to get his act together. Therapy, whatever it takes. If he doesn't, you need to seriously rethink your choices. Emily nodded, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled with the idea. The next day, she told my parents the truth. Predictably, they went ballistic. My dad was furious, my mom was hysterical, and Abraham, well, he wasn't happy either. He called me that night and accused me of betraying him by stirring things up. I told him he had no one to blame but himself. But the real surprise came a few days later. I received a phone call from an unknown number. When I picked it up, a guy on the other end said, "Hey, I'm looking for Abraham. He owes me $3,000, and if he doesn't pay, we're going to have a problem." I immediately hung up and called Emily. She broke down and admitted that she had no idea how bad things had gotten. Apparently, Abraham owed money to several people, and they were all starting to close in. At this point, I was done playing nice. I called a lawyer friend of mine and asked for advice. Then I sat down with Emily and Abraham and told them they needed to get their act together fast. I helped them set up a payment plan and get in touch with some organizations that could help with addiction recovery. But even then, the threats didn't stop. A week later, someone left a note on my parents' car warning them to pay up or face consequences. That was the breaking point for my parents. They stopped helping Emily and Abraham and told them they were on their own. Emily called me, crying and begging for help, but I refused. "I tried to help," I said. "You have to fix this yourself now." I haven't heard from them since, but every now and then I wonder what kind of mess they're dealing with now. As for me, I've finally learned my lesson. Sometimes walking away really is the best thing you can do. After weeks of dodging calls and ignoring texts, I thought maybe Emily and Abraham had finally decided to work things out on their own. But of course, that was wishful thinking. One morning, as I was leaving for work, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Emily and Abraham standing there, looking desperate and exhausted. "We need to talk," Emily said. I didn't have the energy to argue. "Fine. 5 minutes." They came in, and Abraham launched right into his plea. "Look, man, I know things have been rough. I know I've made mistakes. But we're in serious trouble. I need $1,500 to settle up with one of the guys I owe money to. If I can pay him, he'll back off and we can start over." I sat back and stared at them both. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything, you still think I'm going to bail you out?" "Please," Emily said. "This is the last time. We swear." I didn't believe her for a second. But as much as I wanted to tell them to get lost, I couldn't shake the feeling that this guy Abraham owed money to wasn't bluffing. I'd already seen the note on my parents' car and I didn't want things to escalate any further. I sighed. "All right, here's the deal. I'll give you $1,500 one time. But that's it. After that, I don't want to hear from either of you. No calls, no texts, nothing. You're on your own from now on. Got it?" They nodded furiously, as if I'd just handed them a winning lottery ticket. I transferred the money to Emily's account right then and there. It wasn't even that I felt sorry for them, I just wanted them gone. $1,500 was a small price to pay for peace of mind. "Thank you," Emily said as they walked away. "You have no idea how much this means to us." I didn't respond. I just closed the door and went about my day, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. It's been a few months now, and they've mostly kept their word. I haven't heard from Emily or Abraham since that day. My parents still grumble about how I abandoned my sister, but even they've stopped trying to guilt me into going back. Do I regret giving them the money? Not at all. It was worth every penny just to get my sanity back. Sometimes the easiest way to solve a problem is to pay them off and walk away. But if they ever show up again, I'm done. This time they'll be met with a locked door and silence. Let someone else play hero. I am officially out of the game. It didn't take long for things to spiral out of control again. A few weeks after I gave Emily and Abraham the $1,500, I got a call from my mother. "Your sister told me that you helped her out," she said. "That was very generous of you. We had no idea you had that kind of money lying around." I sighed. "What are you getting at, Mom?" "Well," she continued, "if $1,500 isn't a big deal to you, maybe you could help us with the mortgage this month. Things have been tight." I almost dropped the phone. "Are you serious? You think I'm just handing out money left and right now?" She didn't even flinch. "It's just a little help. And honestly, if you have that kind of cushion, why aren't you doing more for Emily and Abraham? They're still struggling, you know." That was it for me. I cut her off in mid-sentence. "Mom, let me get this straight. The $1,500 I gave them? That was a one-time deal, and it's not happening again. And as for you and Dad, you're grown-ups. Figure out your own finances. I'm done being your backup plan." She stammered something about how selfish I was, but I hung up before she could finish. A few days later, Emily texted me asking for more money. I didn't even reply. Abraham called me twice and left me voicemails about how I was family and needed to step up. Delete. The last straw came when my father called and demanded to know where I was getting the money. "If you can afford it, why don't you help us out more?" he asked, as if I owed him an explanation. I laughed. "You think I'm some kind of ATM now? Guess what I am not. And if you keep calling me about this, I'm going to cut you all off." And that's exactly what I did. I stopped taking their calls, I blocked their numbers, and I ignored the endless stream of messages. It felt harsh at first. But as the days went by, it felt like I could finally breathe again. A few weeks later, I decided to go a step further. I adopted a giant Rottweiler from a local shelter. His name was Max, and he looked like the kind of dog you wouldn't want to mess with, huge, muscular, and perpetually scowling. I wasn't even a dog person, but I figured Max would be the perfect deterrent if my family ever tried to show up unannounced. Besides, he was surprisingly sweet once you got past the intimidating exterior. The first time Emily tried to drop by unannounced, Max barked so loudly that she turned and left before I even opened the door. I watched her practically sprint back to her car and laughed until my stomach hurt. It's been a year now, and I haven't heard a peep from either of them. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. Max and I are doing just fine on our own. Honestly, I wish I'd drawn the line sooner. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was the best thing I ever did for myself. Sometimes you have to protect your peace even if it means getting a giant, angry dog to keep the chaos at bay. Life is quiet these days, and I like it that way. My mornings start with coffee on the porch while Max stretches out next to me, keeping watch like the faithful protector he is. I've thrown myself into work, picked up a few hobbies I'd been neglecting, and even started traveling a bit on the weekends. As for my family, I hear bits and pieces through mutual friends. Emily and Abraham are still struggling, though I hear Abraham finally got a part-time job. My parents, as far as I know, are still trying to manage their finances, but at least they're not dragging me into it anymore. Every now and then I think about Thanksgiving, about the years I wasted trying to please people who only saw me as a means to an end. It's not anger I feel anymore, it's relief. Relief that I finally drew a line in the sand and stuck to it. Max has become my unofficial sidekick. People who meet him always comment on how intimidating he looks, but they don't see how he sneaks onto the couch when I'm not looking or how his tail wags when I grab his leash. He's the perfect reminder that appearances can be deceiving. And the best part? I don't live in fear that my family will show up or call to demand more from me. They know where they stand, and so do I. I didn't just buy my peace with that $1,500 I earned it. And if anyone ever tries to take it away from me again, they'll have to go through Max first.